Hello, welcome everyone. This is Mark Franco, and I'm coming to you from Dance Studies Colloquium at Temple University in Philadelphia. And this is the first of the winter-spring colloquia that we're hosting virtually again. So welcome to everyone. And it's my pleasure today to introduce Fernando Lopez Rodriguez, who is a flamenco dancer, choreographer, and a philosopher who lives in Madrid. He has a PhD in aesthetics, sciences, and technologies of the arts from Paris 8 in France. He has a degree in philosophy from the Universidad Complutense de Madrid and a degree in contemporary dance also from Paris 8 in France. I want to add that Fernando has done a master's degree at Paris 8, both in the philosophy department under the rubric of cultural criticism and another in dance department under the rubric of dance research. So he's the dance scholar, the scholar artist par excellence, I would say. I'm so pleased that you're here. Thanks so much for accepting the invitation. He has won the first Dance Research Award of the Academia de las Artes Escénicas de España. He has been also awarded the Best Dancer Award at the 19th Muestra de Danza El Álamo and another award from Impuls Tanz Festival in Vienna. He has his own company and has been performing widely in Europe since 2009. A lot of different productions. I'll cite recent ones in partnership with Belén Maya y Después. Another production in 2021, No hay bailarinas en este país. There are no dancers in this country. And something he's going to talk about today, El amor brujo, love, the sorcerer. I would add that he also has a book out in Spanish called Historia Queer del Flamenco, Queer History of Flamenco, which we're hoping also will be out in English soon. And he currently is teaching in the dance department of Lille, Troyes, in France right now. So Fernando, thank you so much for being here. And
thank you very much.
Yes, pleasure.
So thank you, Mark, for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here presenting this research, which is, as usually, my work connected to my artistic practice and my creative practice. Concerning this Spanish ballet, El amor brujo, Love the magician, it depends. I think there are few translations in English. I will be speaking about Love the Magician, but maybe Love the Sorcerer is also is even better. I have to say that I didn't choose to create a new version or a new piece about this ballet, this Spanish ballet. And I didn't choose to make a research about it. It was a proposal that Ibis Albizu, another philosopher and dancer, made me to create a parallel activity to the presentation of Israel Galvan's version of Love the Magician in 2019 in the Museo Universidad of Navarra. So they have the general program with different shows, and they have also like well, they invite normally philosophers and other kind of researchers to create dialogues and activities about the pieces that are presented in the theater. And I was invited in that frame because since it was a contemporary flamenco piece, also related to some gender issues, they thought I was the person to speak about this piece. But I have to say that, it wasn't my choice, it wasn't my desire. And I think it's something important to say, because we will be speaking about desire and love all the time. But it was a challenge for me, and it was very interesting. So I'm gonna start speaking about the different elements that I found interesting in the analysis of the piece by Israel Galvan. For those who don't know Israel Galvan, he's one of the most important contemporary flamenco dancers and creators nowadays. And then I will be speaking about the choreographic version that I created using all the elements that I found during my research. Also, because I got an invitation by a conductor, Asier Puga, who invited me to create a solo for this score, for this ballet. Everything was at the same time, which was very weird. The two invitations, which weren't connected between them. So the process, the creative process and the research process were happening at the same time, in fact. I would like to share my screen to show you just a few seconds of the piece I'm gonna start talking about, the Israel Galvan's version. And then I will be speaking about the history of the ballet, on all these kind of things. So, yeah. Not this one. How can I, yeah. So this is just a promotional video. So as you can see in this solo version, Israel Galvan appears wearing women clothes, making a sort of a drag show. And the first thing, the first information that I found concerning the history of Love the Magician, concerning the history of this ballet, was that Israel Galvan wasn't the first to make a sort of a drag version. So in this one, we have different versions of Antonio El Bailarín, another important dancer in the field of flamenco and Spanish dance during the 20th century. This one appears in a film called Honeymoon. I think it was recorded in 1954, and I think maybe you won't agree with me that he was playing the role of Carmelo, the main role, but also the role of the witch that you can see here. You have Leonid Massin playing the role of the ghost. And here in the center, you have the witch. And I think the witch is Antonio Ruiz Soler. just a second before you can see his face. Okay, I think he is a witch, but maybe he wasn't. Nevertheless, it was interesting for me because I made another kind of research concerning the role of the witch in different ballets, not only Spanish ballet, but also classical ballets during the 19th century, and then the different proposals in the beginning of the 20th by modern artists. And it's interesting to see how men, masculine dancers, usually can play the role of a witch in the frame of a narrative ballet like this one, and how there are like interesting connections between the masculinity of the witch and the queerness of the male dancer who is playing the role of the witch. So that was the first thing that was interesting for me to say that maybe there's also a queer history about Love the Magician. But in the case of Israel Galvan, he says that he's playing the role of his own aunt, Eduarda de los Reyes, and it's a solo. So he's not telling us the story of El Amor Brujo. He's just using the music of that ballet to create a solo, a choreographic piece without a narrative story behind. And that was also interesting for me because I thought how mainstream artists like Israel Galvan is nowadays can use any ballet, any score, any story to create something new, and also how they use even personal or family informations that are not very interesting for all of us to create a role or something which has like a lot of importance in the ballet. So he speaks about his aunt. He creates the main role for this ballet in relationship with his aunt, Eduarda de los Reyes, and that's the only how can I say, the only explanation that he gives concerning the relationship between his aunt and Love the Magician, which is very interesting in general terms, not only in relationship with Israel Galvan's work. Something that was interesting for me also, as I said before, it's like the idea that every it's not the only case in the career of Israel Galvan, because he has always been playing with famous ballets, famous figures in the history of flamenco, creating relationships in the titles of the pieces, also in the subjects, to create a sort of Spanish and flamenco atmosphere, and to create something very contemporary, but using a very traditional dramaturgy in terms of universe, of aesthetic universe. So you have Los Zapatos Rojos, which is this tale, which is not Spanish, but is very famous. The same with La Metamorphosis, related to Kafka's tale. And then he started to create all his pieces in relationship with elements coming from the flamenco universe. Arena, which is a recreation of the bullfighting. La Curva, which was the name of a show given by Vicente Escudero in the beginning of the 20th century. Vicente Escudero is like one of the most important flamenco artists in the field of avant-garde practices in the beginning of the 20th century. So he creates a sort of genealogy or relationship with Vicente Escudero, creating a show with the same title and creating also a choreographic aesthetic very close to what Vicente Escudero did in the beginning of the 20th century. And also, for example, L'Oréal, a very big piece created about the Roma people's extermination by the Nazis. So there's always this game concerning how to introduce a contemporary practice in the flamenco universe, and how to give something to the spectators that they can recognize in the title, in the scenography, in the music, in the dramaturgy, in order to make them feel that even if it's very different from traditional flamenco, it's still flamenco, no? So this is concerning the beginning of my research, and also the beginning of the process. And now I would like to speak a little bit more about what I found in terms of in relationship with the history of the ballet, that I could use afterwards in the creative process. First of all, the notion of repetition, which is not something specific in this Spanish ballet, but in general terms related to the notion of repertory and the history of ballet. A ballet that has been recreated by almost all the big names and companies in the flamenco and Spanish dance field. And it was interesting for me also to make a sort of game with the words, and to feel like Love the Magician or Love the Sorcerer wasn't the only thing that we repeat, but we repeat also love as a story, as a game that we play in our lives, thinking that we are very original, that we are creating or doing something very new, and forgetting that all people do the same, all people do the follow the same score, and do the same gestures, say the same words, etc., etc. So it was for me something interesting to think about repetition in my creative process, the repetition of a repertory piece, and the repetition of love as something that is presented always as a version of something old. And that's something interesting in terms of gestures, because either in the ballet repertory or in our love lives, we introduce some variations and differences in terms of gestures, in terms of costumes, and so on, that make us think that we are doing something unique, special, and completely new, completely different, and that makes us unique, special, and different as artists or as persons. And following the history of the repertory of this ballet, we start to understand that we are just introducing very little differences, and the general story is always the same. The second element, which is also connected with repetition, I called it diptych, because before this history of repetition of the ballet, something is always repeated twice inside of El Amor Brujo. First of all, there are two versions. The first one was presented in Madrid in 1915 in Teatro Lara, and it was a sort of concert for Pastor Imperio. So just the orchestra and one dancer, singer, and if you want, actress, because she was able to dance, to sing the songs inside of the ballet, and also to say the different texts. And a second version, 10 years later, in 1925, in Paris, I think it was in Théâtre Champs-Élysées, as a ballet. So with a corps de ballet, with different soloists, and with the scenography to tell the story behind Love the Magician. So in that second version, the music changes also. It is a little bit shorter, about 25 minutes. So that was also something funny for me, like even a short concert about love that goes for 40 minutes is too much, it's too long. Love has to be shorter. And in this second version, in 1925, we had also two big names, Antonia Mercel Argentina in the role of Candela, and Vicente Escudero, the avant-garde artist I was speaking about, in the role of Carmelo. Sorry. There was also in this second presentation in 1925 a repetition of the La Danza del Final del Día, which is like the hit of the ballet. Inside the ballet, there are few songs that are very famous. The most famous is this one in the screen with the circle and the fire in the middle. It's a sort of ritual. And this dance was presented as a piece twice by Antonia Mercel Argentina after the end of the ballet. So this is the diptych I was speaking about, and also something that is in terms of music repeated twice inside of the ballet, because the ballet has two parts, and both parts start with the same melody, with the same introduction, and inside of each scene, sometimes the melody, the structure of the melody is repeated twice also. So we have like a ballet divided in two parts, and in every part we have like different choreographies, different scenes, and inside these choreographies, these scenes, a melody is always repeated twice with different variations, but it always repeated twice. So the idea of the need of repeating twice something to feel that it happened was also interesting for me in terms of the creative process. Yeah. So the third element that was very interesting for me in terms of research and in terms of the creative process was the relationship between the composer Manuel de Falla and another composer, Igor Stravinsky, that you know. I found a lot of letters speaking about their relationship, their admiration, and their mutual influence, I could say. And I thought that maybe there was like a relationship between Le Sacre du Printemps, the Rite of Spring, that this modern ballet created in 1913, also in Paris, and El Amor Brujo, which was created 2 years after. First of all, because of all this friendship and this mutual recognition between Falla and Stravinsky, but also because Falla was there in 1913 in the premiere of The Rite of Spring, and when El Amor Brujo, when Love the Magician was presented for the first time in Paris, also in Théâtre des Champs-Élysées, I think, it was in the same program of a concert, the history of a soldier, I think, of Stravinsky. So the first part of the concert was a Stravinsky's piece, and the second part was Love the Magician. Also, there are different musical elements and dramaturgy elements inside The Rite of Spring that reminds me of Love the Magician. We have two acts, or two parts. We have the figure of the wizard, the wise man, in The Rite of Spring, who appears at the end of the first part to kiss the floor, to kiss the earth, sorry. And we have the figure of the witch in Love the Magician. We have the rite at the end of The Rite of Spring with the sacrifice of a virgin. And we have also this ritual with the fire, which is supposed to break the spell, because I'm going to tell you the story. In Love the Magician, we have a couple, Candela and Carmelo, and Candela is persecuted by a ghost, her former husband, who appears and creates obstacles to this new relationship. So they call the witch and they try to make a ritual to break the spell. So there are two different rites in the Rite of Spring and in El Amor Brujo, both following the figure of the circle, which is very present in the rituals, in the choreographic rituals. And yeah, and there's also the use of the rhythm in terms of music in some of the musical scenes. I'm not, I couldn't analyze it because I don't have the skills to do it, but I think there are like internal influences in terms of the use of the rhythm between the score of the Rite of Spring and the score of Love the Magician.
Fernando, Fernando, could you go back to full screen, because I'm getting comments that people think there's a slideshow that's not working. Thank you.
Cool. Sorry about that. So it made me think that I could consider my creative process in relationship with considering Love the Magician as a sort of Spanish version of the Rite of Spring, even if it's not completely true, but it was like a hypothesis that I wanted to follow. And I wanted also to break the dramaturgy of this love story, love triangle that we find in every Spanish ballet. So a straight couple with obstacles between them and a little bit of violence and so on between two men. I wanted to escape from that narrative in order to create something different and in order to create a spin-off of The Witch. Because The Witch is a marginal figure in Love the Magician, but it's very important because they need her to make others' love story possible. And that's the case also in Love the Magician, and it's the case in most of the the ballets that I've been also researching. There's always these old women that is either an obstacle for a love story, for example in La Belle au Bois dormant, or the solution, because they wanted, I don't know, as in Love the Magician, they want her to break the spell of another ghost. So I wanted to create a creative process speaking about the notion of repetition in the repertory, and why do we need to repeat everything all the time, thinking that we are doing something different and something new, and also to make a research about the body of the witch, how the witch is represented in the different ballets, and how could I create my own witch body for this piece. Of course, there are other elements that I found very interesting, but I cannot speak a lot about them. For example, the writer of the script wasn't Gregorio Martinez Sierra. Gregorio Martinez Sierra was the writer that signed the script of the piece, but his wife, María de la Ole Járrega, a feminist writer, activist, and also socialist. She was also a politician whose vision of gender equality and love is much more progressive in real life than in the script of Love the Magician, where she presents this triangle with a jealous man and Lucia, a young woman, who will be used to distract the ghost in order to give time to Candela and Carmelo to escape and kiss each other and break the spell. So that was also very interesting for me to ask who is the ghost in the real life of El Amor Brujo, in the creative process of El Amor Brujo. And maybe the ghost was Gregorio Martinez Sierra, the one who signed the script, even if the real writer was her wife. And also it was interesting for me to ask myself about this distance between the text written by María de la O. Lejárrega as a politician and this script, very traditional, very classical, written for a theater piece. I didn't find any answer about it, but it was interesting. Yeah, as a question. So the construction of the witch was also interesting for me because it allowed me to go through the physical body of the Rite of Spring. That's something that I wanted also to show you. I'm gonna put a video and I will speak about it after. How can I do it? Okay. Why it was interesting for me, because if you have seen the images of Nijinsky's version, the original version of the Rite of Spring, you can see that he decided to break with the verticality, to use these kind of positions with the hands to create different opposite dynamics in the body. For example, the head could go to the upper diagonal to the right, and the rest of the body to the lower diagonal to the left, and also the gesture of the face, which was like a sort of hallucination because of the open eyes and so on. Also because he allowed dancers to hit the floor, to jump and hit the floor. So it was a new kind of body that was created for the Rite of Spring by Nijinsky that connect a lot for me with the body of the witch. So I'm gonna put some, yeah. So this is the recreation of the Rite of Spring by Dominique Brun, a choreographer and researcher who did a very interesting research about the using the photographies and also different pictures of the Rite of Spring in order to create a new version. Here you have the Wise Man. It's presented in the film about Coco Chanel. So a lot of postures, a lot of gestures with the hands, a lot of dynamics were interesting for me to recreate to create the spin-off of the witch, and also to create this connection between the Rite of Spring and Love the Magician. So yeah, maybe we can see just other images. So here you have the sacrifice of the Virgin at the end of the second part. Well, so yeah, that was very interesting for me in relationship with the broken verticality, with the open eyes, with the shaking, the vibration of the bodies, also the heat, but it's not a rhythmical hit as the zapateado that we do in flamenco. It's just the sound that is created when the feet hits the floor because they are it's jumping, no? For example, here. Well, and it allowed me also in relationship with that other research that I started to do concerning the different versions of the witch in the history of ballet and modern dance, to identify the associations between the witch and the figure of the crazy woman, the witch and the sexually wild woman, and yeah, and all this animality that sometimes appears in the figure of the witch, that it's also worked by Marie Wigman in the same time, more or less. You know, Hexentanz, the Dance of the Witch, was created in 1926, so a few years later, but just 1 year after the second premiere of Love the Magician. And that was the other inspirational element that I took to create the body of the witch, the spin-off of the witch in this Love the Magician. Okay, so I'm gonna put the video. I suppose you have seen the Witch of Marie Wigman, but yeah. Now, what I did, sorry. Here it is. Yalla. Okay. So same, this animal femininity was very interesting for me, and was and it's something in terms of physical, how can I say, physical or choreographic identity is something that is very close to what I think about myself, an animal femininity and not a maverick masculinity. That was very interesting for me. And also the fact I repeat it because for those who know a little bit of flamenco and Spanish dance, is important to understand, like the sound and the rhythm appears as a consequence of something else. The zapateado is not like the main action, and then we have the rest of the body, the upper body, the hands, the arms, as a sort of decoration of the rhythm we are creating with the feet. But the sound appears because we are shaking with our feet, we are jumping, or we are doing other kind of gestures that provokes the sound, and another kind of sound because we are not wearing the flamenco shoes, but it's a very powerful sound nevertheless. So these are the elements of that I took from my research that I had presented before in the conference to the after talk or the conference about Israel Galvan's work. And I decided to create a sort of voice off, I don't know how to say, like to read my conference and to do Love the Magician twice because of this idea of something that has to be repeated twice to be understood. So in my proposal, there's the sound of the conference, and at the same time, I am doing Love the Magician. And when the conference is over, I repeat all the ballet with the music. And one of the songs, which is called Canción del Amor Dolido, so Song of the Suffering Love, something like this, I don't know the translation, is repeated 6 times with 6 different singers because of this notion of repertory and the need of have her or his own version of Love the Magician. And the first step that I took to create this physical body imitating the posture and the rite of spring was at the same time that I decided that it was very complicated for me not to follow the music, not to follow the rhythm, and not to follow the melody, because they are very powerful in the Manuel de Falla's score. So I started working with just one gesture for each choreography, for each scene. So during a few days, I just did that. So I started walking. The introduction was walking. The first scene was shaking. Then there was, I think there was ondulation. Then there was jumping. Then there was hitting. That was the choreographic general idea behind the choreographic text that I finally created, because I didn't want to start it writing the gestures and like doing it to follow the rhythm or the melody of that score. Yeah, so I would like to read you the end, just one from the end of this conference that I read in the first part of Love the Magician. Okay, maybe we can start here. Yeah, so 3 options are presented to escape the double spell of the difference and conservative repetition typical of the notion of repertoire in dance. The first of them is simply not to do it, not to make Love the Magician, choreographic asexuality or creative frigidity, bodies destinated to dance nameless choreographies, pieces that don't exist yet. The second is to make love while we think we are doing something else, as Israel Galvan doing Love the Magician, thinking that he's making a sort of imitation of his dead aunt. The third way is making love knowing what is being done, naming it at every moment, literally, drawing in words the sculptural design of each muscle and joint, the geometry of each image, the logic of each association of ideas. To quote, which means to do what we repeat as a repetition, a dated, located, chosen, and signed repetition. Perhaps this is the only way out of the spell of love, affirming the repetitive nature of what seems unique to us, the repertory and its versions. And then love is the gesture that is repeated, and in the gesture, I don't know if this game of words works in English. In Spanish is gesto for gesture, indigesto, which means something that we cannot digest. A gesture that cannot be digested, that returns like the specter. Love, as it is understood in Love the Magician, is something that is repeated, something that comes back, the very structure of repetition, a tradition. Love runs away and chases you. You call it and it runs, but it always returns, like the prodigal son, like Christmas, like Carnival and Holy Week, except in 2020, like the summer heats, like the words of a mantra, like the Swan Lake, like turf, like panic attacks, like eczema, like the tics, like the debates about the laws of purity in flamenco, like the stereotypes, like fashion, like economic crisis, and like the breaking gestures of transgressive artists. They always come again as if they were new. What's more, considering the testament written by Manuel de Falla in 1935, it could be said that Love the Magician as a musical and choreographic work becomes for Falla a ghost whose future repetition the composer wanted to avoid. His last will says, and it is also my will that if my heirs do not need the money of copyright that come from the scenic representations of my works, such representations are prohibited. And this will of mine must be scrupulously observed when my plays and all the others become public domain. I also confirm what I have previously consigned regarding the scenic interpretation of my works and those that may accompany them in the show programs. So this is Granada, 8 September 1935. Love then was prohibited, and it wasn't prohibited by others, but by the same person who had created it. Falla self-prohibited love, despite which love continued to be done. So this is the last reflection that I wanted to share with you, the fact that Manuel de Falla, who was a very Catholic and religious man, started to feel weird and strange concerning his own creations. And in 1935, so 10 years after the presentation of Love the Magician in Paris and 20 years after the premiere in Madrid, he decided to forbid the representation of all his works, but I don't know what they found in terms of legal terms that allowed people to continue representing his works. So I share my screen for the last time to show you. I'm not going to show the images of the piece itself, but the images of the teaser, because it belongs also to the creative process. Because since there was always a relationship between the witch and the figure of the prostitute, the figure of a wild, a sexually wild woman, it was interesting for me to explore the possibility of this prostitute witch who was making love the magician in the street, in a park, in a public place, and to try to feel which kind of difference there was between me doing Love the Magician to be paid to earn money in a theater, and to do Love in a park to earn money also with or without music. So thank you very much. I would like to say some words about the process, but I think it was clear that it was something, a creative process and a research process that happened at the same time, and all the different elements that I tried to recycle from the research to create that piece, and also to make a hybrid proposal between the conference and the show.
Thank you so much. If anyone has questions or thoughts, please share them in the Q&A box, or possibly in chat, but it would be better in the Q&A. So feel free to do that. Thank you, Fernando. It's an amazing account of dramaturgy, of dance dramaturgy. I was struck by so many things. I don't know where to start. I'll just have some of my own questions, unless someone else adds in. This idea of the creation and the research going on exactly at the same time. Can you say a little bit more about that in terms of what was that a satisfying process? What did that change in some sense the result because of that? I mean,
so since I got the proposal for the conference first, and then very quickly the proposal for the representation for the choreography. So when I started to read about Love the Magician, to watch all the versions, the films, and so on, I think my perspective was already, okay, what is interesting for me in terms of a creative process. So I don't think I could say it, but I think the desire of creating, or the proposal of creating a choreographic piece, was directing the way I was reading, I was watching, and selecting also the information, my point of view concerning the different videos and so on. Yeah.
Right. So it just became, in a way, an organic process because of the way it unfolded, in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish we could see more of the piece. I'd like to get a better, because you mentioned a lecture as part of it, which you shared some of it with us. Is that right?
Sorry, I didn't understand. Sorry.
I'm sorry. You mentioned that a lecture of your own was part of the piece.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I read just a fragment at the end. So I took the conference that I gave for Israel Galvan's piece. I changed it a lot because it's an audio, so it has to be like a little bit more poetic. And what I do in my piece is to put the sound of the conference and to do without music all the ballet. And when the conference is over, I start again doing all the ballet, but with the music.
I see. Now I understand better. I see. Okay, got it.
Because of this idea of a 2 acts ballet and the repetition of
okay, I see.
elements and so on.
Okay. Yes, got it. The diptych, the two.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Oh, I see now. Okay, great. It's such a poetic structure. It needs. It's like you took it apart for us, and then we put it together in a sense. It's amazing as a dramaturgical structure. It feels. Am I right in thinking that it's very much a critique of Galvan in a sense, or I mean, in some way you're bouncing off
Well,
of it?
well, the conference that I gave for his piece was a little bit critic, but I decided not to use it for my own ballet. But
Mhm.
in the beginning, yeah, I was disappointed about the use of the musical script, and as I said, I felt like when you are a mainstream artist, you can use whatever you want without paying attention to the details, if I can say.
Right.
And there was so many interesting elements in terms of gestures, of music, of dramaturgy, of the internal story of the creative process of this ballet, the relationship between the writers and the composer, that it was for me like a, yeah, it was for me like a pity.
Mhm.
And also I was asking myself, what programmers would say if I present them a version of, I don't know, Giselle speaking about my aunt Paki?
Yeah.
Uh, they could buy it or no? Because yeah.
Yes, that's wonderful. Uh, wow. It's interesting also that you brought up the masculinity of the witch on the ballet stage. There was an interesting set of talks coming out of Dance Ox in Oxford last week, I think, and the issue of the British tradition of having older women on stage,
Uh-huh.
often witches, but
Yeah.
not always, being performed by men, older male dancers. And they were discussing, Monica Mason was discussing how, I think it was, I'm not sure who among in the Royal Ballet lineage decided she would prefer if only women did those roles. But
Yeah.
that it kind of jumped and it came back into my mind when you said that, because it is a very strong tradition in a way, and
It
we
is.
never rarely have ever questioned that, right? We never think about that very much.
And it's also interesting to see why we decide to put a witch on the stage, because it's always, as I said, the bad woman, the old woman who is there to create obstacles for the young couple, but also the old woman who decided to help others
Right,
to have a normal love relationship or something like that.
right,
Also, always occupying a sort of marginality place. Yeah.
right, right. And the only facile explanation of the men on stage as witches is the burlesque in some way,
Yeah.
or panto in the British tradition. So I have a question. Actually, I have two comments here so far. If you look in the thing,
Yeah.
you see them. The first one is in Spanish. Me encantaría saber más sobre tus perspectivas de representación, especialmente en Estados Unidos. It sounds like you have an offer to work. So if you want to address that, you can. Uh, uh,
Yeah, thank you, Gabriela. We can talk about it, of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a very easy ballet because it's a solo, so I can move alone. I can travel alone. So of course, yeah.
Great. Okay. Wonderful. A wonderful result of your talk. I have a question from Mayetta Goldberg. Thank you so much, Fernando, for your brilliant presentation, and for Mark for bringing him. Pleasure. What a rich and transgressive sketch of a rich and transgressive history. I'm struck that you say that love is better short, yet repeated, if I correctly understand you, in some sort of eternal cycle that always comes back. Yeah, that also make Myra, forgive me if I intervene in your question with my own question, but that I was very struck also by your characterization of love as depending upon repetition,
Mhm.
particularly the repetition of a tradition on the one hand, in order to come upon the feeling of absolute unique subjectivity, which is quite,
Okay.
seems to
Yeah.
me quite apt. And again, something we haven't thought of. It's like, yes, it's really true. Anyway, to go back to Maeda, and forgive me for the interruption. Can you speak about the witchery / wizardry of this ritual repetition on and in the outside in relation to queer love and desire as a recurrent trope in these repertoires?
Wow, big question. I don't know if I understand correctly. Like you want me to speak about the ritual repetition inside of the ballet, or in you mean concerning love to court?
Maybe Maynard will respond to that. Or whether the ritual repetition itself is a form of wizardry, or another one of the synonyms, right? Sorcery, magic, spell, whether it's a casting of a spell. And this notion of falling in love as having a spell cast upon you in some way. I don't know. I'm not sure. Maida here Maida will answer. If she wants to answer live, I don't know. I'm going to press a button and see. Would you like to answer this question live, Maida? Well, we'll see if she comes in. Ah, she did, lower down. I'm asking in the broad and recurrent way you seem to be framing the topic, the trope.
I don't know. I don't know what to say. I'm not sure.
Great. We'll think about that. I'm not sure either about the question. Maybe Maida, you can also fill that in a little more. Dolma sends a question. Thank you so much, Fernando. How did the public perceive your proposal? Did you transfer your version of the dance to a woman?
The transfer of my version of the dance to a woman. You mean that I was like interpreting the role of the witch? Well, what I can say concerning the proposal, I didn't say it before, but when this conductor asked me to create the choreography, he wanted to create a sort of queer version of Love the Magician, of the ballet. And that's why it was a good idea for me to make appear the sexuality and the gestures of the witch on the center of the stage, and not as I said before, as something as someone that who helps others to have a normal relationship. And I think it was the reception of the piece was. It's funny. It's funny because it's like well, it's quite intellectual in a way, but it touches all these questions concerning our own way to conceive love stories. And repetition sometimes is boring, sometimes it's so it's so boring that it's funny at the end. So it's I could say that it's a comic piece in fact.
Well, that really strikes me, that when you speak of the witch in these narratives as facilitating, blocking, or it makes me think of narrative theory in a little bit. It's like the adjuvant, you know, in Greimassian narrative or Propian narrative theory, the idea of the character that fulfills a certain function always, right? In other words, that there's a kind of structural nature of the narrative. I don't know if you were thinking about that at all. You may have studied that in the course of your work, but I mean, the idea that you have, you know, there's the hero and the heroine, and then there's the opposer of the hero or heroine, and then there's the helper.
Yeah, for me, in a part of the conference, I say like love is not something that we repeat; it's the structure of repetition itself. It's something that I affirm without knowing why, but I feel that there's something like this. and I think I'm answering also Meira's question. Yeah, because rituals need to be repeated sometimes to be effective. And concerning the body of the witch is something that it's very important in terms of physicality. I need the repetition to enter into a physical an atmosphere and a physical feeling of what can be the body of a witch, if I can say. So it's not like I don't feel for the moment like I am repeating something boring, because boringness is already integrated in the piece. I speak about the boringness of repetition, but I feel that that repetition is needed to create that state of mind and that state of body. I was also speaking this morning, because I'm teaching this choreography to some of my students, about the possibility of integrating not the rehearsal, but the échauffement,
The warm-up.
the warm up into the piece. So to create a piece that doesn't need a previous warm up, but that is created following a logic or a dynamic that makes you feel warmer and warmer, and that gives you what your body needs to perform the different scenes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Meira added another part to her question if you want to look at it. And see. She says, I'm wondering about the location, the liminal space, whether on the theater stage or not, of this ritually recurrent trope of queer desire in the broadest possible context. What it means for you as a human being, representing or spinning out the witch's body.
Yeah. So I think I was answering concerning the notion of ritual and repetition, concerning what I feel as, but it's always the same thing from the very beginning. Like I feel in the powerful feminine figures, the witch or others, I find something something for my artistic identity that is important for me. I don't know how to say. It's beyond masculinity and femininity, and it's a kind of a form of presence, and also a kind of energy that for me is the correct dose, the correct quantity of of masculinity and femininity. I don't know how to say. And also it's for me like very touching, because of course there's also that this story about all the witches, the real ones, not the witch on the stage. And for me it's very touching to feel like I'm doing a sort of homage, a sort of peace for them, for those who died, for being considered witches.
Oh. Oh.
And yeah, and from the moment of the creation of the piece, I've been like very attentive to the use of that word in Spain. And it's weird because it's so people use it so many times as a synonym of feminist, as a synonym of leftist woman. So conservative people still use that word, and there's still a debate concerning the figure of the witch, and the different crimes that happened in Spain. That yeah, so the creative process made me like more open to this question and more attentive to how a word, or how the stereotype of the witch is still a synonym of what a conservative woman shouldn't be in Spain.
Well, thank you. I don't see more questions at this time. So maybe, unless there's anything else, maybe we'll. Oh no, I have another question from Lucia. I just want to say what a wonderful example this is of dramaturgy. It's just so inspiring. And I do hope that our choreographic students are watching this, or will watch, if they're not, they'll watch the recording of it, because I'm very moved by the quality of the dramaturgy and in the way you describe it. And we have another question from Lucia Ruprecht. Thank you for sharing your work with us, Fernando. I would like to come back to what you said at the beginning, that you created a dance of desire that you did not desire to dance. My impression is that this might have been crucial for your work. Perhaps it is more about breaking rather than casting a spell, in the sense of analyzing, breaking apart a magical, quote unquote, piece of repertoire to do something else. That's a magical question too. Beautifully put.
Yeah. So there was something magical because both proposals came at the same time from very different people for very different contexts. That was something that activated my desire also. I'm not very connected to the new era conception of the energy and the universe and so on, but it was like, okay, if two different people are asking me to work about it, maybe there's something for me and there's something that I can say and I can dance about it. But I had like a very strong internal debate because I didn't want to propose another version, to sing another version of Love the Magician, um, like the dogs who have to pee when they pass through a tree or something like this. So that's why I decided to speak about this notion of repetition and our desire also to be recognized as someone unique, even if we are doing the same. No, so yeah.
Yeah, and that aspect of the titles of one of your dances, which we saw go by a few minutes ago, no más versiones, no more versions, please.
No more versions.
Yeah, but I'm wondering what is the relationship of that feeling to you with respect to the phenomenon of reenactment, which has been quite present in the dance scene for the last 10 years or so, more, maybe more, where there is kind of, is not really repetition, but there's something is being done again. That trope.
Concerning what? Sorry.
Concerning the phenomenon of reenactment. It's a term that I think is only used in English.
No, I know it, but you are speaking in terms of general reenactment in.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking of works like Fabian Barba's Anivelada con Wigman, you know.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to do it. Because only through research, I think reenactment can be interesting.
Right. Right.
If not, it's just again like a desire of recognition through someone else's work. But since the research was interesting for me and I found so many things that were important to say, also concerning the role of the writer in the script and so on, I said like, okay, there's a hidden story of Love the Magician that can be told. And yeah.
Yes. Yes, that comes across very strongly to me, also as a critique of the general economy of the world of ballet and possibly of concert dance in general.
Yeah.
That the constant creativity of creation of new pieces is nothing more than the repetition of, in many cases, nothing more than the repetition of the old tropes. It's more or less covers about at least 85% of what we see on stage, I would say. So the idea of reenactment is requiring research, and by that very fact, escaping from repetition, the kind of repetition you're speaking of, is, I think, very a powerful gesture. and a very interesting one to think
Okay.
about. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Okay. Well, I think unless there are any other questions, I encourage you to chime in at this point. Otherwise, we will draw things to a close. I think that I haven't seen anything else. So thank you so much. This was really illuminating, and to have an artist reveal their dramaturgy and theory, and how that dramaturgy and research and theory magically become art. I mean, excuse me for reusing that term, magic, but there's very little space between the two, which I think is quite fascinating. I mean, just in the way it's presented is all I mean. But thank you so much, Fernando.
Thank you.
I hope you continue to discuss this and learn more about your work here.
Of course. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you.
All right. Thank you to all listening.